Good morning, innovators. David Wright here, and I'm your host of the Disruptive Innovators Champions of Digital Business podcast. And today I am lucky enough to be joined by Paul Smith. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I know we've been trying for this for a little while, so it's great to have you on. For those of our listeners, Paul, who may not be familiar with your body of work, can you just share a little bit about where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Paul Smith. Hello, everyone. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Amnesty International, one of the largest human rights nonprofit in the world. So my remit here covers things like IT operations, portfolio and change delivery, information security, information management, enterprise architecture, enterprise business systems, and tech engagement. So quite a good, interesting team over here.
Yeah, and I've admired the work you guys do at Amnesty for so long. One of the reasons I was so excited that our teams hooked us up, and I've been a donor for, I think I got a little monthly donation to Amnesty. So
Thank you, sir.
yeah, of course. I mean, it's great work. So Paul, I want to definitely dive more into the work you guys are doing at Amnesty. But before we do, want to hear a little bit about your background. And even prior to that, we like to start the episode with just one piece of actionable advice you might look to leave everyone with today.
I think that's great. And I think it's the one piece of actionable advice that I could leave you all with today, being to develop your skills in being resourceful. Whatever resourceful means to you, but develop those skills. And I'll explain a little bit why as we get into the conversation.
Boom. Love it. Love the teaser here. So Paul, let's get into it. Let tell me a little bit about your background, kind of how you started out and how you got to the point that you're at in your career today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. So I guess potted history for me would be I'm from a very humble working class background here in the UK. So I was from in the Midlands. Didn't start out in IT, didn't pursue IT through school, but I decided to invest in myself through some part-time distance learning to move into IT. At that point, whilst I was working full-time and managing a family at an extremely young age, I was a young dad. So lots of things to juggle. Early on in my career, I was selected for a directorship development program, which then provided me investment both financially through a sponsored MBA program, and with the mentoring and in-depth exposure to aspects of an organization I usually wouldn't have any right to get involved in, particularly not at that point in time when IT was very much a cost function at that point. But that led me to start my IT career in defense before I moved through into direct marketing and big data management, and then latterly in the non-for-profit sector, where I obviously am the CIO at Amnesty. We also hold a couple of other advisory roles in other industries to complement that work to enable me to give back. But I guess the journey was pretty much peppered by lots of personal and professional development. I feel like I've been learning my entire life, and that doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. But also with a damn good dose of support from others and a lot of opportunity along the way, which I've had to be best place to take advantage of, I think. That's probably the potted history.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it goes back to the resourcefulness too, like kind of maximizing the opportunities that were afforded to you, which not everyone does, because there's a level of fear and trepidation that comes with kind of stretching, and so I admire that. I would ask. You mentioned the kind of peppered history. What would you say is one of the most important things that you learned? And you mentioned kind of the personal, professional. It's true for me too, over the course of your journey. And if you could think kind of about what life was like before and after, maybe you could share kind of a little bit about what comes to mind.
Yeah, I guess probably one of the most impactful things I've learned on my career journey so far is that you really can't do anything alone. And I think, you've got to sense through those networks for knowledge exchange, for shared learnings, for potential opportunity and risk. And you've got to always seek to ask who else is like me and what are they doing, or what can work here. So, being inquisitive and in that, I would actually say to seek to give before you ask for help. But before that, it was a very lonely journey. It was quite stressful. It was hard work. I would come up with answers to everything from scratch, learn things myself that I didn't know before I could even get going on the task at hand, and do a heck of a lot of trial and error. But I think after it, I've realized the value in cultivating and growing my network, not just my own benefit or opportunities, but where I can help others like me with challenges that they've already encountered, with my learnings and experience, and to share my knowledge. And I think in terms of the benefit to my organization, it enables me to channel the collective experience of the network to bring it to bear in my role for the organization. So it's almost like you get Paul Smith plus 10 other CIOs. You kind of get in that effect, which is a lot of value for money. So I've probably saved myself quite a lot of time and effort in that, and just shorten that time to value. And I think I've made a lot of really good friends along the way, and I hope I've inspired some other people like me. So I'd say that's probably my biggest thing.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And as a striver, right, especially early on in my career, I just can identify with like, I'm gonna figure it out, just like, that kind of driven, and it's useful, right? I think that determination and grit and kind of stick to itness is part of why I am where I am today. And I came to find for myself that it was also tied to my ego, right? And like kind of having that get smashed over time. Now I can recognize that the older I get, the less I realize I know. There's an interesting conundrum, because I'm as knowledgeable and as successful as I'll ever be, but just it's the humility in knowing that there is so much more, right? And I love what you're saying about the shared experience, because I think one of the biggest values that I've gotten out of podcasting and live events that we host, and is this community of executives that I've become friends with, that I can bring a swath of other executives and share that experience, and vice versa. And I've learned so much, and I agree. I mean, just that mind share of experience is invaluable, because it's stuff you can't find on Gartner, right?
Absolutely. You got to go over yourself. And you use the word ego there, which I think is the perfect word, right? I mean, you've got to not be afraid to ask and be open to other ideas and experiences and life perceptions. If you can do that, there's a lot of value in it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I know for me, the time that, I can think of that moment in time, and when my ego was smashed, and it was actually tied for me more towards a personal matter even than a professional, but it ended up affecting my professional career so profoundly. Is there a time that you can think of, Paul, that you either had a project fail, or some sort of hardship, but ultimately it was the catalyst for a new beginning, or a lesson that you learned that was profound? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I guess one lesson I think I've learned over my career, I think it's the realization that time itself can be one of the biggest challenges in delivering technology change. And I needed the help from my network to see that through someone else's eyes. What do I mean by that? So when we're working on particular technology changes or projects, I think the problem that you're looking to solve has a specific pain and relevance at a point in time. I think the benefits you're looking to deliver have a specific value and relevance at a specific point in time. Just risk profile change over time. People change over time too. Their attitudes, their desires, their energy, even who's in what role. So I think managing time as a thing in delivering change, I think is really important. And I needed that network to help me see that and to learn from the experiences of others that maybe been through some of those bigger programs. And they said, this is kind of what I wish I'd have done differently. And that gets us into time to value, delivering value early and all that good stuff as positive benefits. But that's probably the link I'd make between the two.
Yeah, that's profound, and I I like to think that we do that, but now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, huh, like obviously time, yes, time to value, and yes, kind of the quick wins, but like managing to it in the way that you're saying, like now I have to take a look at that. It's something that I'll take away from today.
An example I would give, I mean, you can do all the right things in terms of setting yourself up to deliver change in an agile or waterfall way, but what if the people change? What if your sponsor moves on? What if, your key hero on the project moves on? So these are all things that can change over time. And no amount of planning or early value delivery can help that when the rug's pulled out of you in that way.
Yes. Absolutely. And we have definitely dealt with that for sure. So Paul, I want to talk more about your role at Amnesty. Before we do, we always just like to ask favorite book or literary piece, blog, either that you've read recently and are hot on, or all time. Your choice.
It's a great question. I will put my hands up front out. I'm not a big reader. I learn in other ways, to be honest. But right now I'm reading a very good buddy of mine's book. It's called Clearly Agile, and it's a leadership guide to agility from my good friend Giles Lindsay. So I think it's worth a check out. He's a good guy and he knows his stuff.
Yeah, I will definitely check that out. We have a lot of our listeners are into that too, so I'm sure they'll get a lot out of that. So Paul, you've been at Amnesty a little over like 3 years, give or take. Talk to me a little bit about your vision for the organization, based on the overall mission of Amnesty, and maybe some of the key initiatives that you guys are working on right now.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think so. So my vision is simply to bring to bear the power of information and technology, and I use the word separately, information and technology, to end abuses of human rights globally. And I intend to do that with my team through protecting, enabling, and guiding the employees, volunteers, supporters of Amnesty International, and those we serve through IT. So fundamentally, we're a research and an information management organization. That's our core. We follow the research life cycle. It's kind of what we do when we tackle human rights issues. So it actually stands to reason that the more efficient and effective we can be through that information management life cycle, the more aligned and enabled we will be to meet our strategic goals. And that presents great interest and an opportunity for my area in the information and technology space. So some of the key initiatives that we're focusing on, certainly for the moment and looking forward, are in the globalization of our common services offering. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is specifically to just improve collaboration globally. Common platforms, common systems, single sources of truth, to be able to multiply our people power through better information and knowledge sharing, and to channel our capability. But also to harmonize technology in terms of simplification for the end user. So to make the services simple to consume, to enable community-led development and knowledge share on the tools and services that we provide. And to also, not least, but to also close the digital divide across the organization. There can be a very, very big difference, even within our own organization, for the services available to our people, which may not even be technology related. It could be the fact that I don't have sustainable power where I live, which prevents me from consuming those technology services. Or maybe there's some other kind of local regulation which stops me consuming that thing in that way. So globalization of our common services offering is important to us. And moving on from that, we're continually improving our defense in depth on information and cybersecurity. I'll talk a little bit more about that in challenges in a moment, actually. We're improving our basic services provision in human resources, information management, and financial services capabilities through the continued focus on people, data, process, and tech. And we've certainly got quite a bit of focus in our research and evidence capability management space at the moment, where we are using both existing and assessing emerging technology to assist us in our value chain, because it's the core of what we do. That can look specifically like seeing where technology can help us with the identification of relevant research sources, disinformation protection, ingestion of information and data, classification, metadata extraction, correlation, tagging and storage, cleansing, deduplication, cross-checking, obfuscation, enrichment, the list there goes on. Discoverability and searchability for those working on common themes to understand what should I care about in our research evidence repository, and how we summarize that, how we bring out insights, and how we analyze the information available to us so it's as accurate as it can be. And even looking to how we can start to produce automatic first draft outputs using tools like large language models. So our focus goes less on creation and more on the QA and the refinement of the process. So there's a lot in that space. Other key areas are around insights and analytics. As a data-driven organization, you'd expect us to want to increase our maturity there continually, to put the right data in our users' hands at the right time for the right reason. And actually, for me, we've got a specific strategic focus on where the rubber hits the road. So that means educating our people to get the best value out of the tech that they have. So to make sure that they're supported on our enablement journey to ensure maximum engagement over time and actually return on investment for the tech that we have. So it's not everyone comes to the organization from the same technology background, right? So we want to make sure everyone has a common denominator of support and service and education. And then we look to build on that through communities of interest. So education and engagement is really important for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a lot. Not an easy task as well, having a presence in, I mean, how many different countries are you guys in?
I think the last time I looked, it was 150 countries and territories.
So, yeah. The knowledge management conundrum, when you think about people being that spread out in that many different countries, speaking that many different languages, that many different currencies, like cultures, it's cultures, right? Because you have like the X's and O's of the language itself, but then like take it a step further and just the way that they approach their day. And it's just,
we value that inclusion and diversity focus, right? But it presents unique challenges and unique opportunities. And we've got to try and find some way to harmonize people's ability to connect and work together on themes of interest.
Yeah. Well, kudos. I do, it's exciting that there's never been a better time with the tools that we have access to now to address some of those, items that you had kind of listed, that laundry list of, the deduplication and, all of that, like indexing, et cetera. I know we're broaching this subject with, a number of health systems, for example. They've had, their data has been distributed in SharePoint and ServiceNow and, Confluence, whatever. And like, how are we kind of reassembling that and indexing that? And there's tools now where we can leverage AI to greatly expedite that process, a process that, for a large health system might have taken us 12 to 18 months. Now we can do in 3 to 6 months. And it's exciting. So I'm excited for you guys. What would you say is, you kind of touched on it a little bit, some of the biggest challenges that you guys are facing today as an organization?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first one, because I guess it's always high priority for us against, we continue to be a target for nation state actors with practically unlimited resources in the cybersecurity space. Oddly, it's a sign we know we're doing a good job if we're upsetting people. They're looking to protect their reputation on the global stage because they're high stakes, right? So we know we can't afford to let up in our resilience and awareness, and we must always stay alert and continue to build our defense in depth and recovery capability, because given what I've just said, it's often a case of when, not if, there's an incident. So I think cyber and information security for us is always important, and to recognize the close links between digital safety and physical safety for our people and what they do and where they operate. So that's important for us. I think secondly, it's maintaining momentum against a backdrop of global financial crises, both in terms of people's propensity to give to a nonprofit for the cause, but also in the sustainability of the organization. So helping and working with others in that space and playing our own part is an ongoing challenge. And I guess relatedly, demonstrating continual value for money, services deliveries, a strategic organization and not a cost center. And lastly, you touched on, I think, a bit earlier, but we have to do all the stuff we do at a point in time, but actually we need to ensure immutability of our research over time. We hold quite a lot of the history of the world's human rights atrocities over the last 60 years in our digital and physical archives, which is publicly accessible knowledge. We publish a lot of this information. So maintaining that, not just ensuring it's relevant and accurate today, but over a prolonged period of time, is a challenge in itself. When things like fallbacks change, people's attitudes to this information change, people's attitude to what's right and what's wrong may change over time. It's an interesting challenge, but I've got a fantastic archives team that work within my organization to help me do that.
I got to be honest, Paul. It's one of the more interesting kind of organizations that I've had the opportunity to speak with, and we're an executive representative from an organization like that, and my wheels are turning. You guys are up to a lot. Are there any best practices? And we've gone through a couple, but any additional best practices that you might recommend to our kind of community in kind of managing a team and in situations like this? Any other that come to mind?
Yeah, I can probably give you three, David, to be honest. I mean, my first one is relevant and timely communication, always, with a focus on digital experience management. So for us, that means involving the user early and throughout with a focus on being useful and usable. And I guess associated to that, always having a continual learning mindset. You can learn from anyone about anything. People have a lot of lived experiences, right? Some of which are directly related, some are not. But don't be so close to listen to an opinion and cast it off as just that. So that's number one. I think number two, I think we touched on it again earlier, but you have to be inclusive and respect diversity of ideas, specifically in an organization like mine. You have to give people an opportunity to hear about, learn from, and offer contribution. Because that communication happens in the mind of the recipient, not in what you say. It happens in what I hear and how I process it. So that means giving people time and space to go away and maybe come back to you next week if they couldn't offer a suggestion there and then, or presenting information in lots of different ways through lots of different mediums. And I think lastly is just to have as part of your culture a continual improvement, kind of forward and progression mentality as the norm. So we're always looking for ways to improve because frankly, necessity is a mother of invention for a non-profit with limited resources. So we try and embed that in our cultural DNA, and I've got a great bunch of people that, you know what, if they didn't know it, they go out and learn it and they find out and they try and solve it. So I think as a best practice, we've certainly embedded that into our culture.
Yeah, no, I love that. And those are some really great practical kind of things that we can do to look inward. How about, just curious, and we kind of touched on this too, innovative technologies you're leveraging or starting to leverage to support the vision of Amnesty?
Absolutely. So I gave you probably quite a verbose list of opportunity in the research and evidence management space a little moment ago. So it doesn't take too much imagination to see where some current technologies may help us there in terms of the artificial intelligence processing of evidence, multimedia evidence, the extraction of data, and the automation of output. So we're certainly looking right across that spectrum of capabilities with a view to some of the later large language models and AI tools that I'm sure we're all very aware of. But actually, I think it's worth saying that innovation is actually a matter of perspective and perception sometimes. I think it can be just as much about applying the basic technology building blocks in innovative ways to me or to the listener as an individual to solve a business problem. So what do I mean by that? So what's basic to you as a FTSE organization with almost hundreds of millions in budget, maybe very innovative to me as a small nonprofit, depending where you are in your maturity journey and what you can typically afford. We do focus on doing the basics well too, frankly, because that can be innovative for us in the way we enable people to work. I think by extension and loosely linked, I guess, again, the cyberspace, we're looking to make sure we are as mature and tech enabled in that space as we can be and as affordable in defense of the organization. So we'll certainly look into what we can afford and do in that space too.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that kind of point about innovation being, or like what I heard is like, innovation is, or to me, it's kind of like this creative solution to a problem. Like it's not, it doesn't automatically mean technology. And I think you kind of touched on that. And a good example I like to give is, not to, harp on healthcare, but we had another health system that, people were getting lost. It's this huge hospital, and like, they had looked into wayfinding, but they couldn't afford it. And so a lot of folks at that point would just kind of throw up their hands and be like, well, this is what it is for now, right? And they developed this system of like arrows on the ceiling where, like, it kind of guided you where you needed to go, and it improved patient experience dramatically, and it cost however many pieces of paper they used to put those arrows on the ceiling, right?
Absolutely.
So it just goes to show you, right? Like that, that slight shift can make just a world of difference, right? So few more questions for you, Paul. One would be, where do you see kind of the nonprofit research kind of, you guys are fairly unique, your industry, if you will, but where do you see things going in the future for Amnesty and organizations like it, or what do you think will be some of the biggest changes as time passes?
It's a really great question. I guess in part my answer is probably relevant to any CIO role anyway, because there's a percentage of IT that is IT, right? And then there's a bit that's relevant to Amnesty. So on reflection with that, I think my first thing would probably be to say we're in an age of everything as a service. If you've got a credit card and an internet connection, you can go and buy whatever you want. If you have enough money, you can solve any problem that you want. So I think CIOs generally need to become expert orchestrators and capability and service managers. You can go and get what you need, but how do we bring that together? How do we stitch it together? And how do we make it relevant for this organization's problem and to make it stick for our users? So I think that's important. And within that, CIOs are going to become connectors of people and connectors of things and connectors of people to things. So we're becoming ecosystem leaders. And that's certainly what I'm starting to see here at Amnesty. Because there is an ecosystem at play here, not just people, but things and technologies and processes that makes up the digital brand of your organization. But I think it's been said a few other times that, business strategy is technology strategy. More and more CIOs are becoming leaders of organizations, sources and catalysts of critical strategic change. They're the people that boards are looking to move the needle in significant ways. When there's an issue, when there's a big risk, I'd go to the technology guy in the room, right or wrongly. We're not subservient cost centers anymore and back off support functions. So I think leaders in our space are specifically look more to you for that competitive advantage and to drive growth through the application of data and technology and through partnerships. So I think digital data and tech leaders need to be people and strategy people, not tech people. And I think loosely linked to that, I think we need to become expert disruption managers. So we've seen in the last 18, 24 months what happens when the latest cool thing hits the market, right? But high-speed digital data and tech disruptions is the norm now. Case in point with those large language models. So they can be triggers for change or to need to do something different that changes your plans. That disruption can be positive in the sense of an innovation or an opportunity, or for an external or an internal trigger. Or it can be negative in the sense of a risk or an incident or an unplanned event. Again, that can be internal or external. So your ability to spot, sense, catch these things, do something with them, and quickly impact assess them and understand, do I need to pivot here or change course for the organization? Do I need to grasp that opportunity or change course to avoid that risk? I think is really important skill for any business leader, actually, not just a CIO. But I'm seeing each of these things really come into sharp focus, even in my role here in the nonprofit space.
Yeah. Oh, great insights. You said a lot there, Paul. I mean, one thing that I take away from that is how am I creating a culture of innovation, right? How am I fostering an environment where my people aren't afraid to fail fast, integrate feedback, keep it moving, right? I think for someone like yourself, who's clearly a proponent of that, um, it looks easy, or not. I don't want to say it looks easy, but like there's just a lot of organizations where it's going to take a lot of work to get there, right? And this type of come from. And the other thing that I think kind of dovetails nicely into that I heard too is like, how am I, being that business leader, right? Not just the classic siloed IT support function, and being that leader of the business. How am I going really wide in the organization to understand the viewpoints of the different stakeholders and enroll them in what we're doing? Because, in my experience, so often, if we're all working at an organization, and like, especially like Amnesty, right? I mean, there's a reason you agree to work with an organization like Amnesty, right? So even if there's certain, and most nonprofits, even if there are certain dissenters, in the variation of their opinion, right? Or they may think they have a unique kind of viewpoint on something. It's my job to kind of hear that, understand that, and kind of show everyone how, like, it's all kind of like, we could acknowledge that, and you can be special, and like, this is how we're going to weave it all together. I think, as technologists today, it's more important than ever to be able to kind of step out of my comfort zone and go have those conversations and enroll those people. If God forbid they feel put on, right? And it's just not going to be successful, right?
I think fundamentally the recognition that disruption, innovation, risk, change can come from anywhere. If you imagine you're on a ship and you're looking down at your radar, your radar display, things are going to go blip on that radar display. They may be close, they may be far out, but you need to be set up to be able to sense that stuff and know what to do with it, whether it's a great idea or whatever. So I think one thing is there's something there as a digital and tech leader today to make sure you understand that those things can come from internally, externally, through partners, through the industry you work in, and how you spot them, do something with them, engage with those individuals. I think is actually a core competence for an organization, far and above a tech leadership role.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Paul, this has been awesome. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Last question I always like to ask my guests is just, if you could go back 5, 10, even 15 years in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Do you know what? That's a really tough question for me, because I've learned a lot along the way and I've got a lot of scars. But if I keep it professional, I think I'd say get out of the comfort zone more often. So for me, that means doing more of this, do more interviews, podcasts, keynote speeches, roundtables, networking events, making the effort to share, because actually people will reciprocate. People appreciate it. You don't know who's on the same journey as you until you start talking to people, and you will be surprised who you can help. And I wish I'd kind of started that a little bit sooner, because I've seen such a massive benefit of doing it ever since. And as I said, I've met some fantastic friends, lifelong friends. So I wish I started sooner.
Feeling is mutual, absolutely. But we are where we are based on our experiences, right? And I admired where you are for sure, Paul. Thank you again so much for being on today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, David.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you all next week.